This week in Learning How to Light, we're going to talk about working with lots and lots of light sources. Now, like most things in life, the more complicated something becomes, the more different elements you introduce, the more parts there are to go wrong and the more confusing it can get. So there's some principles I'm going to talk you through here that should hopefully allow you to navigate your way through this potentially very complicated scenario of having lots and lots of lights on the go. Don't forget, a completely free lighting course that I'm building on week after week on my YouTube channel. Subscribe so you get updates, like if you like what you're seeing, and obviously stick any questions you've got in the comments below. Let's get stuck in. Before we get too stuck into talking about different types of lighting, I'd like to go into a little bit more detail about shooting with more than one light, and also the concept of a key light. Now, first off, it can be very, very tempting to just throw light at things. If you happen to have lots of money to spend and you love your toys, it can be really tempting to go, oh, I've got everything, I'll just throw 6 lights at this, it's going to look fantastic, I have a light over here, a light over there, and the sun, and all these different things. Wonderful. Okay, now I'd also have to admit, hand on heart, I own something like 9 or 10 flashes along with 3 tungsten heads. There are shoots when I've also hired in additional equipment on top of this, and I would be lying if I said that lots of light isn't sometimes the answer. There are definitely jobs that I shoot where I throw a lot of light at things and it's what's needed for the shoot and the results are fantastic. However, catch coming, what a surprise, never forget the basic rule of the more complex something is, the more parts there are to go wrong, and the more things you'll have to be watching and the more things you'll have to be taken care of. And what you don't want to end up in is a situation whereby you are there to serve your equipment rather than your equipment serving you. So as a golden rule, before we get into talking about more than one light, always remember, keep it simple, stupid, the classic KISS principle. Okay, if one light will do the job, one light is what you need. Don't just throw lights at something for the sake of it. Now, one way to keep a handle on things when you start to use lots of different lights is to employ what's called a key light. That's a very simple word. It's a term you'll hear photographers bandy about quite a lot. The name is actually quite misleading. I, for a very long time before I was taught properly, thought that a key light was a specific light type or a specific light modifier, like say a softbox or an umbrella. A better term rather than key would actually be foundation light, because what a key light really is the light around which you base other lights that you add to the shot. It's the foundation on which you build your lighting, so it's the key to your lighting. How this works in practice is if you've got only one light on the go, let's say daylight, well, that by default is your key light. There's no real issue at work there. The minute you start to add another light into your shot, whichever light you are basing your lighting around, whichever the light is most important, becomes your key light. You then adjust your other lights around your key light. Those 4 characteristics that we all know all light has, you adjust those based around the characteristics of what your key light is giving you. For a simple shot, like this headshot here of Lisa, which we're going to come into in much more depth later when we take it apart completely, the key light is the flash head with the softbox on that's lighting Lisa's face. The other 2 lights' 4 characteristics, their direction, their quality, their quantity and colour, are all then adjusted in relation to how the light from the key is affecting the subject. Since the light on Lisa's face is the most important in this shot, it's natural to make the light with the softbox on the key. Now, don't make the mistake that I used to though, and think that whichever light it is that is sort of face onto your subject, or whichever light is nearest the camera, is by default your key light. That is not the case. Your key light is the light that is most important to the shot, and there can be several instances whereby that will by no means be the light that's nearest the camera or the light that your subject is facing right into. Let's look at a few examples now. If you're shooting outside in bright sunlight and using the sun as a light, it's almost certain to be your key light. The direction it's coming from, the quantity it gives out, and the quality of it will all dictate not only where and how you shoot, but how you place other lights, how powerful they are, and so on. In fact, using the sun as a key light may almost rule out using any other light in some circumstances, as its quantity may be so much that the equipment you've got with you simply won't have much visible effect. The built-in flash in your camera, for example, isn't likely to do too much on a bright sunny day. Getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, if you're creating an elaborate studio lighting setup and using modifiers like grids, you may actually have to use one of them as the key, even if they're not pointing at your subject. The reason for this is the quantity issue. A grid, as we'll find out later when we talk about modifiers, eats light up and reduces its quantity. So if you want to see the effect in your image, you'll need to adjust your other lights to suit. This is what I've done in this portrait of golfer Chris Wood. The spot of light on the back wall is cast by a light on the floor behind him with a grid attached. This makes it the weakest powered light of the 4 I'm using, so although it's behind him, I actually consider it my key light. One last example. If you're mixing light of different colours but trying to bring the colours into line at the same colour temperature, you can add gels to alter the colour of your lights. Since it can be either impossible or a huge hassle to gel all the lights in a building, such as this indoor training area where I shot footballer Peter Crouch, where the lights are obviously dozens and dozens of feet up in the air, it's quicker and simpler to gel any smaller lights, like flashes, to match the colour of the ambient light. In this respect, the colour and to some extent the quantity of the overhead lights become my key light. I base the colour and then the power output of the flashes around them, even though the flashes are the lights really lighting my subject. So a quick recap. Don't add loads of lights just for the sake of it. Okay, don't overcomplicate something that can be done simply. And when you do have more than one light on the go, it will help you enormously if you designate one of them as a key light and you adjust the other lights around them to suit the effect you're looking for. Okay, hopefully that gave you some insight into how you can make a potentially very complicated situation fairly easy to understand and not get too confusing. Next week, I'm going to talk about how you arrive at a correct exposure and how your camera's meter particularly can be fooled by lots of light sources, different light types, and that kind of thing. See you soon.